Good morning, judges, and thank you for being here today, giving up your Saturday to talk about an issue as important as procurement. My name is Hannah Bailey. I'm a second-year student from Dalhousie's Master of Public Administration program, and I'm here with some of my classmates who are going to introduce themselves now, starting with Michael.
Hello, my name is Michael McEachern. I'm also a second-year MPA student at Dalhousie.
Hello, I'm Deanna Manalakis, and I'm a first-year student at Dalhousie.
Hello, my name is Mohammed Ibrahim bin Tariq, and I'm also a first-year student in the MPA program at Dalhousie University.
So thanks, everyone. If we could move to the next slide, please. Yeah, we're going to dive right into the problem today. So the assigned case highlighted numerous problems that are related to the federal government's procurement practices, rules, and norms. And it also highlighted a troubling lack of respect for the traditional public service values and ethics code. To break it down more specifically, it all seemed to start with the lack of technical skills within the public service, particularly in respect to digital competencies, which made it necessary for the government to hire external consultants. Because of this, procurement and contracting activities have increased significantly in recent years, amounting to more than $15 billion in spending in 2021 and 2022. While procurement contracts are intended to bring value for money to taxpayers, this can only be done when proper practices are followed and respect for values and ethics is enforced. Unfortunately, the case suggested that a lack of oversight, accountability, respect for values and ethics, and a decentralized procurement process were leading to widespread inconsistencies and norms in contracting practices between departments. In some cases, not following the rules was actually the norm. Since public servants are human beings, it's no surprise that bias and unfairness can create problematic procurement processes and lead to a lack of stewardship. This compounds the procurement problems that the government is facing. And to ensure that Canadians receive good value for money, the government needs to take action. Next slide, please. The action that we're proposing today is a $73 million investment to create a dedicated contracts working group under PSPC. This group will review all federal government contracts valued at $25,000 and above. Next slide, please. This process will begin with departmental audits, which will then be sent to the Treasury Board for a centralized review. From there, a pop-up working group under PSPC will be formed to begin the centralized contracting process. Ultimately, the pop-up shop will develop into a long-term departmental division that focuses exclusively on contract review, allocation, and project management. I'll now pass it over to Michael to discuss the preliminary review process.
Thank you, Hannah. Next slide, please. Right, so as Hannah alluded to, this is both a technical problem, but also a cultural problem. So we wanted to reflect this in our review that we put forward. This should be a two-pronged approach where we have a departmental audit that focuses somewhat on the technical aspects of what the public service is missing in a technical capacity, but also investigating the culture surrounding procurement and why these cultures of common sense, cultures of adhering to values and ethics of public service are not being adhered to, and what are the barriers for public servants actually adhering to the process of procurement. So on the departmental side, that's the investigation. Where TBS comes in is managing a centralized review where we look at both the departmental audit of culture and technical capacity, and also tasking PSPC on professional procurement efficiencies. So TBS is this central coordinator managing this that will collect these perspectives and tie them together into comprehensive recommendations on how we can procurement going forward. So the objectives of the departmental audit is, again, to look at the culture of procurement, to empower project managers to actually adhere to the values and ethics. Now, we'll do this is by identifying red tape and best practices. This is particularly important because best practices might have come up with public managers' experience, but may not have the ability to be shared widespread. And so this review should highlight how these project managers have overcome some of the barriers in their way from effectively managing procurement practices and share them with the broader federal government. We also want to investigate where the process fails, what are some of the knowledge gaps that will require new training, and what are some of the communication barriers in the way from project managers up to senior management, up to the DM level and beyond. Why are these communication lines failing to highlight when procurement fails and when we need to take action so we can avoid instances like ArriveCAN or other procurement failures. Next slide, please. So on the process, we expect that the departmental audit will be headed by deputies, but delegated down through the rest of the department to manage the collection of information. TBS is to work together with deputy heads to create a review plan for each department and approve it so that the process is standardized and that the information that TBS collects from these reviews are in a format that can be utilized for future recommendations. Once these review plans are approved by TBS and put into place, it will then start a full departmental investigation across federal departments, starting at the senior, going down to the lower management to understand at the operational level of these procurement plans, what's going wrong, what are managers struggling with, and what are their perspectives on procurement practices. That will then get fed back up through senior management and reported to the ODMs, where they can then package this into a formal review report and fed back to TBS for their consideration. We expect that process to take around 3 to 4 months, bearing any kind of unforeseen challenges. TBS's role in this would be to oversee the departmental progress, so requiring frequent progress reports on how each department is progressing in the review plans and making sure that departments can stay on track and have the resources they need to perform these reviews. TBS will also be coordinating with PSBC, who has this technical capacity to look for efficiencies in service procurements. So PSBC will have more of the technical information around procurement practices because they're the main holders of the procurement reports. So together with the departmental audit and PSBC's findings on efficiencies, TBS can combine these into designing and putting forth policies that support accountability and strong values and ethics in the procurement process. We expect that to take around 1 to 2 months. I'll now hand this back to Hannah. We'll talk about short-term plans. Thank you. Next slide.
Thanks, Michael. So as we said at the outset of the presentation, after the contract and review processes are finished, it's important that the government prove their commitment to making short-term actions that will lead to improvements in the procurement process. And there are a couple of ways that we think this can be done, starting with a pop-up shop of contracting specialists that is housed under PSBC, and that will be staffed by people who are already employed in the public service, and they'll be redeployed into that contracting specialist group. Once redeployed, they'll receive formalized training in budget analysis and contracting procedures to ensure that they're able to critically appraise the proposals that they receive from private companies, as this was a competency that was lacking as described in the case. But of course, rules changes also help to encourage positive change in contracting procedures. For example, disallowing automatic contract extensions and instead insisting that those over budget and over time projects be reviewed by the centralized working group under PSBC will allow for greater accountability and resource management. I'll now pass it over to Deanna to describe the long-term structure of this division.
Thanks, Hannah. At the center, next slide, please. So at the center of our approach is a strong governance framework aimed at providing senior federal officials with well-defined roles and duties. We propose establishing a dedicated branch within the procurement department to focus on contracts, ensuring centralized oversight throughout project life cycles. Performance metrics, particularly KPIs, will assess project success and hold senior officials accountable. Continuous oversight through regular review meetings fosters a culture of accountability and enables prompt issues resolution. Transparent reporting via project status reports to senior management and stakeholders enhances decision-making and accountability. Regulatory communication channels will be established to address performance expectations and contract terms promptly. Quality assurance measures, including KPI monitoring and service level agreements, ensure compliance and identify areas for improvement. Next slide, please. So empowering project managers and teams, along with integrated project management systems, supports effective control and accountability. Establishing internal controls and oversight mechanisms prevents procurement process abuse. A comprehensive risk management procurement is essential prior to project approval. This ensures thorough assessment and mitigation of potential risks. These risks may include financial risks, legal liabilities, digital risks or security threats, and updated system management considerations. To address these risks, contingency plans and alternative sourcing strategies should be developed to guarantee continuity of operations. For instance, pilot projects should be mandated and assessed to identify potential risks and determine appropriate timelines for implementation. Additionally, the decisions between in-house development or utilizing external data housing systems should be carefully evaluated based on project recommendations and long-term objectives. By proactively identifying and mitigating risks through a robust risk management procedure, we can enhance project success and safeguard against potential disruptions. We highlight the significance of digital literacy and continuous training to enhance procurement competencies and stay ahead of emerging trends and technologies in the field. To drive innovation and efficiency, we advocate for the establishment of a collaborative working group comprised of representatives from various departments, agencies, and private players. This holistic approach fosters knowledge sharing and leverages expertise and best practices across sectors, championing a culture of innovation and continuous improvement in revolutionizing procurement processes, digital proficiency, and accountability. These collaborative groups will be tasked with assessing multiple facets of projects and offering valuable insight and recommendations. Embracing the innovation cluster model will involve engaging non-private sector participants who can provide diverse perspectives and expertise in involving digital technologies and organizational design. By facilitating collaboration and assembling representatives with different backgrounds, we enhance the review process by incorporating a wide range of viewpoints, resulting in more comprehensive evaluations. In conclusion, the implementation of a robust government structure, performance metrics, continuous oversight, transparent reporting, and quality assurance measures are crucial steps towards achieving long-term control and accountability over projects within the federal procurement system. By empowering senior federal officials with clear responsibilities and roles, aligning project objectives with organizational goals, and emphasizing digital literacy and continuous training, we can drive innovation, efficiency, and project success. Through collaboration with diverse stakeholders, including private players, and the establishment of working groups and review committees, we can foster a culture of accountability, transparency, and continuous improvement. Together, these measures will ensure that projects are executed effectively, risks are mitigated, and the public trust in the procurement process is upheld. Now I'm passing this on to Ibrahim to provide a budget overview.
Thank you, Diana. Next slide, please. So as my colleagues have already delved into the heart of our proposed to address the systemic challenge which is facing the Canadian government's procurement process. Starting off with creation of a dedicated working group within PSPC to establish this vital unit tasked with reviewing all Government of Canada contracts valued at over $25,000, we propose a total investment of $4.75 million, covering the initial setup costs and annual operating expenses. To conduct thorough departmental audits and centralized reviews, ensuring compliance, identifying the red tape, and recommending improvements, we estimate a total cost of $51.5 million. When looking at the short-term solutions, implementing immediate measures to enhance oversight and accountability, such as the establishment of the pop-up shop, working groups, and formalized training, this will require an investment of $2.925 million. The long-term plans building upon the short-term activities will create more robust procurement processes and governance structures, which will require a total investment of $7 million. Next slide, please. Now let's break down these budget estimations. When looking at the dedicated working group within the PSPC, this will include hiring specialized staff, training, and the infrastructure to support the unit's operations. When looking at the department audits and central reviews, this will cover the costs which are associated with conducting comprehensive audits and reviews across government departments and agencies. When we're looking at the short-term solutions, this budget will support the immediate implementation of measures to enhance oversight and accountability in procurement processes. Lastly, the long-term plans. This investment will facilitate the development and implementation of long-term strategies to improve governance structures and procurement processes. Next slide, please. As we embark on this transformative journey to revitalize Canada's procurement process, it is crucial to understand the inputs driving our initiatives and the profound outcomes we aim to achieve. Looking at the first input, recognizing the persistent threat of corruption and non-compliance, as my colleagues already mentioned, with established rules, Our interventions seek to create an environment where ethical conduct is upheld and deviations from the norm are swiftly identified and addressed. The outcome from this will be that our interventions will establish clear ethical frameworks that govern procurement practices, delineating any acceptable conduct and providing guidance on ethical decision-making. This will cultivate a culture of integrity and ethical leadership across government entities. Central to our efforts is the unwavering commitment to safeguarding the public interest. By fortifying oversight mechanisms and instituting transparent practices, we aim to ensure that every procurement decision reflects the collective welfare of Canadians. Through optimized procurement practices, we anticipate significant improvements in resource allocations and utilization. Taxpayer dollars will be directed towards initiatives that deliver tangible benefits to Canadians, maximizing the return on investments and deriving socioeconomic progress. With taxpayer dollars at stake, responsible stewardship of public funds is paramount. Our initiatives are designed to optimize the value derived from government expenditures, minimizing waste and inefficiencies while also maximizing the impact of investments in goods and services. Ultimately, the successful implementation of our initiatives will cultivate greater public confidence and trust in government institutions. Citizens will also have faith in their interests are being prioritized and their contribution to the public purse is being managed responsibly and accountably. Lastly, holding stakeholders accountable for their actions is fundamental to restoring trust in procurement processes. Through enhanced accountability measures, we will seek to instill a culture of responsibility where individuals are entitled and are answerable to their roles in procurement life cycles. In summary, our initiatives are poised to usher a new era of procurement excellence categorized by integrity, efficiency, and accountability. Together, we can redefine the procurement landscape, advancing the public interest, and fostering a strong, more resilient Canada. Next slide, please. Thank you for your attention and commitment to this vital endeavor. Together, let us embark on this journey to transform Canada's procurement practices and uphold the principles of good governance and accountability. Your support is instrumental in realizing our shared vision for the better and more transparent future. Thank you.
Well, Mohammed, and to you and to your colleagues, thank you. We understand very well the time pressures that your advice has been constructed in, and we appreciate it very much. We've got colleagues here who are quite keen, I'm sure, to answer or to ask you some questions that you will undoubtedly answer. I'll mix it up from the way that we have been doing this. Patrick, why don't we start with you, please?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks everyone for the presentation. A lot of work in this, clearly. My interest is in the vendor community and how they play in this in these challenges. I noted that you did mention that you were going to set up some working groups to tackle the issues and the challenge and develop solutions. You did mention that you were going to involve different stakeholders, including the industry, the vendors. I guess I'd be interested to hear a little bit more from you on how you feel industry can contribute to help resolve some of these procurement challenges, whether it's the processes, the culture, ethical issues, and so on.
I would be comfortable answering that if the team's okay with that. I think by welcoming industry into our conversation and on our review committee is really important when addressing digital literacy. This can actually help us make sure that the right projects and the expenditures within the allocated budget can actually get the job done. I think that also what it does is that they stay ahead on the trend. Something that was mentioned in the case was software development, maintenance, and maturity, and I believe industry players and participants would be able to add like very crucial perspectives to how maintenance and maturity of software can be taken care of in-house from a federal with consideration of the federal government.
Thank
I
you,
hope
Dan.
that
Super. Ron, I might ask you to go next and just we talk about the overall strategy and the issues being addressed, please.
Yes, thank you very much. So, in terms of the short term portion of the solution and bringing together this group of individuals across the public service to form that assessment group, I'm just wondering, as that short term assessment process rolls out, what have you identified as the key risks to the success of that process, and what are the kinds of things you see doing to help mitigate those risks?
For sure, I can take this question. So some of the risks that we identified when we were putting forward that short-term solution include not being able to redeploy current public servants and instead having to look to external groups of people to hire and bring them into the public service for the purpose of joining that contracting group specifically. And of course, those kinds of activities, anytime you're looking outside of the public service, you're looking at a longer hiring process and a more intensive security process. All of that contributes to greater costs. So of course, we were hoping that it would be possible to hire from completely within the public service and just redeploy people. But it is a risk that may not be the case. We're in a critical labor shortage, and things like that have to be, thought about reasonably. Another risk that we identified, because the procurement practices currently, as described in the case, seem to not be going particularly well. And so hiring people from other departments and just putting them under one house, one roof under PSPC to then go about contracting more exclusively doesn't necessarily address the competencies or the lack of competencies that they have in contract review. And one of the ways that we sought to overcome that was by providing more extensive training directly to those individuals. We figured that would be easier if they're all in one place, providing like digital skills, contract review skills, how to read a budget and assess whether or not it's adequate for the project or whether it's reasonable. We figured that would be easier if they were all together. So the education component of the project is also extremely important, just as important as bringing those people into PSPC under that division. So those are a couple that we had thought about, and I'm sure that there would be more if we thought about it for a longer period of time. And I think that's the value in having a pop-up shop to start, is that you get to see some of the issues that arise, and we can address those as we move forward into the long-term structure of the project.
Very good. Thank you. Very helpful.
This is a good segue into kind of the issues around the overall feasibility of the program. And Donna, I know that you're particularly interested in that.
Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you so much for the presentation. Very well executed. I have just two questions for you. One of the first questions I have, and it's kind of, Hannah, you started building on it a bit about the training. And then specifically in your, under one of your slides, you had as a key input to the issue was related to corruption and non-compliance. Can you talk to us a little bit about what the content of that training would look like to address the issue of corruption and non-compliance, given that you really did identify that could be a key issue? Just going to share my second question so your colleagues can prepare for this as well. In your presentation, you talked about that you would use audit processes to ensure that, for example, the controls or aspects of what's needed for procurement was in place. And I'm wondering, do you feel that that is the most ideal way of assessing, given that sometimes with audit, they say, yes, the controls are in place, but you have recognized in your presentation that there are other things that are going wrong. Do you think that audit is the most ideal? And also, given the fact that audits take a considerable amount of time in government, 6 to 12 months, usually to do comprehensive audit. So those are my two questions. Thank you.
I can speak to the first question and then pass it on to the second. Yeah, you're right. One of the main sort of considerations that we wanted to give to the case was around corruption and noncompliance. I think everyone here is probably well versed in the scandal, I guess we could call it. That was the ArriveCAN app and the myriad of things that went wrong with Phoenix. At the end of the day, addressing human behavior is really hard to do. That's why the public service has a code of values and ethics, is because we're really hoping that people will stick to that. But it doesn't always happen. And I think there's no clearer example of that than the most recent ArriveCAN example. Some of the measures that we were talking about to address that included like limiting the number of contracts that a single external consultant could receive, just to inhibit some of the bias that would come from public servants themselves. Ultimately, we decided not to go that route because there was no real magic number in terms of like the dollar value of contracts that one single external consultant could receive. So we decided not to go that route and instead tried to build the structure of accountability around this pop-up shop, which would later lead to a more embedded division within PSPC, so that at the end of the day, when projects are allocated, there was a clear system of accountability in place, leading all the way up to like the department head and the minister, so that Canadians could have accountability for the projects that the government is undertaking on their behalf. So that was sort of the way that we went about addressing corruption. I think reinforcing the values and ethics code is always important, but at some point, you know, we have to accept that human behavior is at times unpredictable. And as long as we have the structures in place, the education in place, and the accountability measures in place, that's almost as much as we can do to ensure that these projects go smoothly. And for the second part of the question, I'll pass it on.
That would be me. Thank you, Hannah. Donna, just so I make sure I caught all the elements of your second part here, you're talking about the timeline of audits, and you're talking about going beyond audits, correct?
Yeah, just basically, is that you're
Right.
given what audit will address, did you think of the limitations of that process in relation to your strategy?
No, absolutely. So you're right. There are certain problems, and there is no silver bullet with fixing government policy or finding out where things are going wrong. So it's always a trade-off, and things take time. So with an audit, we emphasized we need to hear back from the project managers what's going down wrong on the floor. Now, you could do that from a central position where TBS sends out individual auditors per department, but you get kind of this this tension between a central agency going into a department, going down to the managers, and they're not as willing to be honest with the challenges they're having, as opposed to relaying this to their coworkers. So we really wanted to make sure that this was decentralized and in a way that departments could design that made sense for their institutional cultures, for the way that they know their employees work. So that's why we went with departmental audits that way, because we think culture is necessary. We think that despite being long and despite being missing some technical perspectives, I mean, things are going to fall through the cracks on. We're not going to be able to review every single piece of procurement requests that went through every department from 2016 to now. And that definitely wasn't the intent of that departmental audit. It was that will be given to PSPC to manage that more technical side. The way we kind of balance that, you're right, the departmental audit will miss some things, is to make sure that we do use PSPC for another kind of external view on top of this cultural audit in the departments. So you get a bit more of a diverse perspective on what's going on here. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, listen, I think we are at time. We could ask so many more questions, and obviously the complexity of these issues demand that everyone asks a lot of questions. On behalf of my colleagues here, thank you very much. You've got thank you written on your slide. If we had slides, we would have thank you written on ours as well. Very nice presentation, and enjoy the rest of your Saturday.